All right, here we go. All right, it's 4 o'clock. Call the Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting to order. The first motion is to adopt the minutes of the last meeting, which was January 25th, 2023. Do I have a mover for that? And seconder? Okay. The next meeting will be on March 22nd at 4 o'clock. This is a tentative date, so we'll update the website if that should change. All right, the first item on the agenda is the Traffic and Parking Management Plans Construction Parking Review. And the speaker here is Sonali. Thank you so much for coming forward. Okay.
Madam
Is there
Chair.
anything you want to update or change on the your report?
Nothing further to add to the report, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, I have a question from Councillor Wolf.
Thank you very much. A few questions on this one. I think it was about 3 years ago, Council voted to, I think it was remove like staging grounds on development sites or like loading bay. Could you if you recall, could you update what that was called? And I thought that was going to be something that would be reviewed. Like, does it work or not work? Because I think it ties directly to this item when construction projects are spilling out onto the road and needing to block public roads and have enforcement, traffic flagging crews and stuff. In some cases, if they were able to do that staging on their property, we wouldn't even need to have this discussion. Do you recall that? It was about 3 years ago, and I thought it was going to come back and be reviewed if it was working. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I don't recall that particular referral. What I can say is that through the traffic management plan review, all staging and loading requirements for the construction activity are required to be on site. Should there be certain phases of a construction project that does require activities on the public street, such as concrete pours and like, a separate permit called a street use permit would have to be applied for by the contractor.
Okay, thanks. To follow up on that, I feel like we're needing more of those on-street project areas because of perhaps that allowing for more density and more building on the site, so there's just no room to park trucks or concrete pumpers and that kind of thing. For example, the corner of Westminster Highway and 4 Road has been just devastated during the morning commutes because half the lanes are taken up and the other lane goes the full block length of the Garden City lands on two sides. And it's, I think, partly you can see, look at the vehicles that are there, and some of them are non-marked, so they're likely workers who are part of the flagging crew. And I know in the report it mentions that many are supposed to park off-site and then be shuttled into the site. So I think it's hard for us to enforce that. As is mentioned in the report, there's lots of things that are challenging to enforce. I do agree with the take of fines or bonds as being complex and challenging. That would be option 2 and option 3. I appreciate the option 4, and I think that is the, staff don't say it's the recommended option, but I feel we've been successful with pilot projects, and to try this out I think might be a way to go. We already have the technology for that license plate recognition vehicle that can go around and easily determine which vehicles have allowance or not for that area. So I think it'd be the way to go. There's nothing in the report under financial impact for the operating budget impact. Could you speak to that if we were to go with option 4?
Through the chair, with that option, the costs regarding operations would be borne by the contractor.
100%. Okay, thank you. And to follow up on that, I also noted, and I know this is exemption for, where was it here? Buildings under 4 units or something like that. This is on the beginning of the report, page 10, for residential developments less than 4 units that front a minor street are exempt from traffic parking management plans. But I also wondered if we could, if staff could comment on removing that exemption and including all residential developments to have, maybe not to the same level of traffic management plans, but a management plan. And some of the things I'm seeing concerning is a single family home gets built and the front of the fence or property line on city property, I assume, is where they just put a pile of debris. Not into a bin, just pile it up. And it's stuff that typically can't go in the garbage, so it's maybe drywall cuttings and other things, and they're just piled up. And when it's windy, like we've had, they blow around. When it's heavy rain, it takes some of that debris and puts it into the closest storm drain. If there's a ditch in front, the ditch is full of stuff that's come from these construction sites. So, yeah, could staff comment on perhaps having some other level of management plan for the residential developments that are 4 or less units?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, certainly staff can take that under advisement. Right now, the exemption applies to smaller developments outside of city centre on local roads, so it's a very finite area. With that said, those sites are still subject to all civic bylaws, including the traffic regulation bylaw, should there be any infractions.
Yeah, I guess my last follow-up then on this is, I think even those small properties can have major impacts on our city. For example, the dump trucks or flatbeds that hit an overpass. At this point, we don't know where some of these are coming from or what job site they're going to. These multi-million-dollar impacts to the city could be from these single unit sites. And so I just feel there's maybe a little bit more ownership that needs to fall upon all development, not just the large scale one, because they're the ones that it's very obvious for people using our roadways or sidewalks that they're impacted for months at a time and in quite intense ways, as opposed to these minor road areas. But they're still very impactful to the environment and the people who live there. So with that said, I'll let others talk first, but I would be in support of option 4. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to clear this up a little bit. Councillor is looking at PWT 12, where it says option 4, but in the revised agenda and revised thing, that's actually option 3. So if you
Only 3 options.
I know, but on the original report, it does say option 4. I've got it here in front of me.
Madam Chair, if I may clarify, the revised report is the one that has the 4 options. That supersedes the previous report.
Okay,
with 3.
because on this one, it's got 3, and on this one, it's got 4, so it's a little confusion there. So, yeah, okay. Yep, okay, so it has 4, right, but this one says there's 3. Okay, well, let's not worry about it. Option 4 is the one that Councillor Wolf is supporting. All right, next on the list is Alexa Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this report. When we first heard from some of the people in the neighborhood, it sounded like some of the concerns were things like construction workers parking, people having trouble seeing around cars, tearing up of the boulevards and things like that. I'm wondering if any of these really address these. I guess the bond would address it, because then we would see that whoever was parking on those boulevards, then we could fix the boulevards potentially after that construction is done. Is that correct?
Through the chair, even the current measures with respect to those violations that you described are infractions of the existing traffic bylaws and other bylaws of the city, so they could be enforced even today without any of these options.
Okay, so they can be enforced, but when we're talking about fixing the boulevards for the neighborhood once a project's finished, like if you're the immediate neighbors, can the developer also be in charge of fixing those couple ones if they were the ones that chewed it up, those couple boulevards?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, typically a performance bond is secured. That helps to reduce the cost for the city or alleviate any city costs related to repair or damage created by the developer. So there's a cost recovery mechanism through that process.
Okay, so you're asking us here to pick one of these. What if we sent a ranked questionnaire to the neighborhood and found out what they wanted to do? So they could see these 4 options, they could rank them, and then we could make a decision based on what the neighborhood wants. Can we do that?
Certainly, at the direction of committee, staff could undertake a survey. At this point in time, staff's recommendation is to maintain the current measures that are being taken to address issues should they arise. It does happen from time to time, but what we're seeing is that there's pretty good compliance with our TMPs, and that once we are aware of an issue raised by a resident, that communication with the associated contractor, and they're knowing that ultimately the city has the heavy hand of issuing a stop work order, pretty quickly gets them into compliance. So staff's recommendation would be to continue the status quo. That seems to be effective. We'd monitor the situation and bring forward any recommendations if required, but certainly we can take direction from committee.
Okay. How many stop work orders have we had in the last year, do we know?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I don't have the exact detailed numbers with me. I know Building Approvals Department may have that information. I understand that there are stop work orders that have been issued for a variety of different civic bylaw infractions with respect to
In this area?
TMPs.
In the
Sorry?
Spires area? Because isn't this specifically around the Spires area?
Through the chair, the referral was raised due to concerns from the Spires neighborhood. Staff's review was citywide.
Okay, because I think a big piece of this is just that Spires area, because it's going through a massive amount of redevelopment, whereas most other neighborhoods, it's more of the one-offs, right? So
I think Mr.
are we
Coop,
looking to, this is our blanket, what we're going to do for the whole city versus having a small thing in the Spires area to deal with just what they're going through in the next few years?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I'd just like to elaborate in a way to from what Sonali stated, is that the right to impose stop work on a construction site, that's always available to us. And in numerous times in the past, we have supported bylaws enforcements, whether it be traffic or whether it be noise or others like that, with a stoppage of work just to get a realignment with city bylaws.
Okay, but we don't know the numbers behind it, right? All I'm saying is you're recommending,
Right.
staff's recommending the status quo. If we understood that there was, 3 stop work orders in all of Richmond last year, we might think that that's reasonable. If there was 500 stop work orders because of people parked all over things, then our choice might be completely different on this. So it just might be backed up better.
Yeah, through the chair, we've not had many instances where we had to do a stop work order for traffic violations.
Okay.
And if I may, I'm sorry, we're running out of seats up
Yeah.
here, but thanks, James. Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I don't recall any stop work orders in the Spires Road area based on traffic infractions at this point in time. We do think that in general, things are pretty under control out there. We have received 4 complaints out there from one individual since last April, but we haven't received any from anyone else. And to be honest, bylaws has been out there and on every one of the complaints that we have received. And some were actually not even in proximity to the construction that was going on. So we do think that out in Spires in general, from what we've heard from the public, that problem is largely addressed at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Just before you go, I do have a question. In the agenda, it says that the staff report should be received for information, but as Councillor Liu pointed out on the summary, it says that the status quo of process of requiring, works well. So let's be clear, we're asked to vote on receiving this for information and leaving it as is. Is that clear? Is that correct?
Councillor Day, Madam Chair. No, staff has brought this forward for information. We provided you a number of options should you wish us to pursue something other than the status quo. We believe that the status quo is working right now. If council feels differently, you can certainly provide direction to us to pursue one of the other options that's been presented, or to even think up additional options.
Okay, I think Councillor Bill McNulty is next.
Sorry, I'm not on the committee, but I do want to make a few comments and ask a question. First, the question, I guess. They have to submit a traffic management report. Who studies that? And does it go out to the public before you approve it?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, it's the traffic department that reviews that traffic management plan along with engineering staff sometimes,
Okay,
depending
so
on the
you
scale of the
approve it.
project.
But when the construction takes place down the street from me, you've approved it, but I have no say in it.
Through the chair, that is the case. There is consultation with nearby schools, but not residents.
It's not with the public. Okay. I'm going to make my comments because I feel very strongly about this one. And I think, I can't make a referral, but I can at council, but if somebody wants to make, we deal with complaints. People don't complain because, one, they don't know how, and they say nothing's going to be done, okay? Spires Road was a disaster, okay? I'll tell you, even the developer in the corner, who was a supporter of mine, did a crappy job, and I told him about it. And I had many campaign people from that area, and we couldn't get in and out of there, okay? So I'm telling you, it was a disaster. But nobody complained, except Mr. Gonzalez. Now I'm hearing from Mrs. Robertson, and now I'm hearing from everybody, et cetera. So we can't hide behind that. So we want to make things better, okay? We need to talk about, when something comes in, what it's going to be like and who it's going to affect and how it's going to affect the homeowners living there. For example, I couldn't get to where I had to go all the way around Spires Crescent to come back to where our friend was with his townhouse in the corner because I couldn't get there. The trucks blocked the road. It was muddy, it was this, it was that, there was a dump truck there was everything else, and that went on for the whole period of the election. So I'm not a happy camper on this, and I'd like to see us do something about it. We need to look at inconvenience, because people are getting very upset now in this day and age with short tempers and where they're going, and we're hearing about it. And I think we can do better because the developer doesn't care. He just wants to make a buck, get in there, dump his stuff, and I don't give a damn about you, et cetera. I went through that yesterday, just about got run over down over here in Sapphire Crescent when they're trying to unload some tarps and stuff for the roof on it. So I do make the comment through the chair on it. I think we need to have a referral to come up with it. And what about Saturday and Sunday?
Through the
We have rules, right?
through the
They're
chair
not
to Councillor
followed.
McNulty, absolutely. There are rules, and they are enforced by our inspection department.
When somebody complains, and I haven't complained, okay, in my particular case, okay, but they're working Saturday and Sunday, okay, because people don't know how. I think through the chair, I'd like to suggest that we ask staff to look at how we look at the people that are affected. For example, I mean, look at the mess out here on Mineral Boulevard, for example. They have incompetent people. I'll be honest, the flagging is the worst I've ever seen anywhere, and everywhere in the city. It's not our people. I keep asking, why can't we train our own people? It's because we would have some good ones out there instead of them. But I feel very strongly about this, that we're talking just certain things, and there is a standard of living. People are inconvenienced for 18 months to 2 years because they can't get to their houses, or their kids can't play on the walk. They can't play on that grass. You know, that is what we've got to look at. And I think we put up a bond. And I don't mean a $5,000 bond. You put $100,000 in the bank and we'll start deducting it. And we'll give it all back to you, or whatever the amount is. We'll give it all back to you when you got a clean report card.
Let's let staff
You know,
answer those.
you don't have a clean report card, sorry, Jack, and yeah, it puts the cost up. But, you know, God bless Mr. Gonzalez and Mrs. Robertson, and most of us know her, okay? Because they support them, and I'll use their names. But
Let's-
they were very inconvenienced, so anyhow, from my point of view, I see that we need to look at the homeowners living there, wherever they're, whether it's a single family or it's a multiple family, because we're talking safety.
So we do have.
So I'll leave that with you, Chairperson. I'm not a member of the committee, but I'll be very interested in what we're going to present to council on Monday, because I'm going to make a motion on Monday if you don't.
Okay, Mr. Ursic, I believe, wants to speak to these questions.
Madam Chair, just a couple of comments maybe. What we're, by providing this for information, we're suggesting that you continue with the traffic management plans. And our feeling is that by and large, they work pretty effectively. I'm not going to argue that there aren't some areas where there have been issues. Now, if, and those plans are pretty technical. They take care of the parking. They make sure that there's off-street, parking or some other arrangement. If committee would like us to take a look at how we might consult or provide notice to a neighbourhood when we're receiving or reviewing a traffic management plan, then a referral to staff would do that, and we could do that. If you would like us to take a look at the Spires area specifically, this referral was citywide, is my recollection, and that's how we've dealt with it. But we've heard about concerns in the Spires area, and if you would like us to take a look at that area and do an assessment and come back to you with some recommendations, again, a referral would get that done. In terms of complaints, I mean, we do rely on complaints, there's no question about it, but we do try to make it easy. We require builders, developers to post contact information on properties, and our inspectors inspect to make sure that the signage is put up and remains up, because some developers are better than others, that's the bottom line. And if the signs get taken down or disappear, we try to make sure that they go up. The point of that information is to make it easier for residents to contact us and to also contact the developers. So there might be a number of reasons why people don't complain, but the city does try to make it, make ourselves as accessible as we can.
All right. Councillor Hobbs, you're up next.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm not on the committee either, but just a comment on the report. First, thanks for the report and the options. I appreciated the rationale, and I tend to be in agreement with you on the status quo part. I think when you talk about stop work orders, that is a velvet glove. I can very well imagine a contractor or a builder or a developer that getting their attention very quickly. So it's probably a good thing that it hasn't had to be used. Just comment on option number 4 too, the fee issue. I think that is something that if we did go down that path, and I recognize that's not the recommendation, we would want to talk to the community, because the $100 fee a year, I know it exists in some other communities, and not everybody's thrilled with that. So residents might want to be careful what they are asking for, actually. So if that was done on a trial, I'd probably look at waiving it for the trial period anyway and let people assess what they really think of it. But I am happy to hear that the Spires Road issues in particular have been dealt with effectively. I have talked to a couple of people in that area as well, and don't want to characterize your comments too specifically, but I thought they were relatively happy with that part of it. So I could be wrong on that. Just the court thing on page 12, I think, I just wanted to clarify something. At the bottom paragraph on page 11, rather, says when you do the enforcement of bylaw enforcement, it mentions having to observe the vehicle for 3 hours. And last time I had anything to do with court, really, I thought there were ways of gathering evidence on vehicles that did not require you to actually sit there and watch the car. For instance, a lot of bylaw people would chalk the tires or take other evidentiary things that you can do nowadays. And on a reasonable grounds basis, courts, especially traffic courts, which are a low threshold, would find that that was sufficient to indicate the vehicle had been there for at least 3 hours.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, that's correct. We can chalk the tires, and now with the LPR license plate recognition technology, we can see specifically in time how long the vehicle's been parked there.
Sure. So that's a practical way to do that enforcement, and you don't need to watch it. But thanks for the report, and if it does come to council, I'll have a chance to vote on it some way. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Councillor Au, you're up next.
Yes, I'm interested in to explore further on option 4. And since staff mentioned on PWT 13, the second paragraph, mentioned that this option might have been used by other cities as well, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, there are permanent residential parking programs in other cities in the Lower Mainland, yes.
Oh, I see. So this is not similar to what you are proposing here, or you are talking about here, right? It's some permanent permits for certain area.
Through the chair to Councillor Au, to clarify, option 4 relates to permits during the course of a construction phase on a temporary basis. Staff do have a referral regarding residential permit parking in the Azure Road area that we'll be bringing forward a staff report for council's information in April.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that, okay, so this is not a problem unique to Richmond, right? So I think in other cities, they may have encountered similar problems. So how do they deal with it? And what has been the effectiveness of the measures that the other cities have taken?
Through the chair to Councillor Howe, generally for high parking demand areas where there are activity centers next to single-family neighborhoods, parking permits is being used in other areas to give priority to residents for street parking. With respect to construction zones, typically our scan of other municipalities indicates that the TMP process, along with the regulations of the corresponding traffic bylaws, are what's being used to regulate parking infractions.
Okay, good.
Well, a lot on the table there. It sounds like, if anything, option 4 is one option that most councillors are interested in. Is there an appetite to vote on accepting the report and bringing this to the whole of council next week? Or is there any appetite to potentially make a referral or pick an option? Councillor Wolf?
Yes, thank you. I see the options are we just receive it for information. It does not go to council then, where there is some appetite around the table of non-committee members that would like to see further discussion and changes. So I would like to move option 4 at this point, and if it gets approved, it could go to council and maybe get additional parts added or amended, but that's what I'd like to put on the floor.
Okay, before we vote on that, can staff clarify, will this report, if it's approved for receipt for information, will that go to council next week?
Through the chair, if it's received information, it will not go to
It
council.
will not go to council. Okay, there you go. Okay, we have a mover for option number 4. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Au, thank you very much. And any further discussion on that motion? Sorry, Alexa. There we go, Councillor Liu. Oops, let me try again. There we go.
Thank you, through the chair. I like what staff came up with the different ideas. I don't know that it makes sense citywide to be implementing this pilot project. I would support a referral to staff to look at the Spires area and come up with some options for that. I think we have a variety of different experiences amongst the people at the table here. And so if we could have a more objective evaluation of what's happening in the Spires area, because probably we will end up at some point with another area that goes through a similar redevelopment that then we can apply it to. We don't have that yet, and I don't think it's time to start applying it citywide, to start charging everyone $100 to be able to park their cars anywhere, nor do we even necessarily want to go through that exercise of piloting it and figuring it out, because there are other options that are available too. And we might want to hear from the neighborhood before we implement something. So to better understand what's happening in the Spires neighborhood, I would support a referral to look at specifically at the Spires neighborhood and then come up with some ideas. And I would support just keeping it as the status quo. I think we're trying to fix a problem that isn't there by going through this extra process. I think we've been told by staff, and if we understand correctly, there actually haven't been very many of these stop work orders for traffic. And as a matter of fact, I was driving on 2 Road today, and I thought about it the other day too. I was actually thinking that some of the traffic management was working quite well, that the flaggers were doing a good job and everything else. I do realize, of course, that right by the Garden City lands, it is a bit of a challenge getting 2 lanes into one going down 4 Road there every day during rush hour, but hopefully that project will be over soon. And certainly nobody's parking where they're not supposed to be. That's part of the traffic management plan, what they're doing at the current time, so.
Okay, we have Councillor Heed up next.
Thank you, Chair. Do we have any indication at all where the pilot project would be situated?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, that would be dependent on a TMP being submitted to the city and looking at the context of the neighborhood to determine if that approach would be appropriate, if that option was to be pursued.
Can you speak closer to the mic,
Oh,
please?
sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, that would be dependent on submission of a traffic management plan related to a development, and staff would need to review that as part of that process once that application is made, if that option is to be pursued.
So,
And if I may, sorry, Councillor Heed, through the chair to Councillor Heed.
Senator.
What I'd suggest is if council does determine that they would like us to follow through and do a pilot project of this type, staff would have a look around the city and try and find a place that would be appropriate to pilot something like that, and bring that back to council as part of that pilot.
thank you. Through the chair, would we look at the Spires Road area as a potential area for the pilot project?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, absolutely. Certainly, if that's a place that council would like to see a pilot of this nature, we could certainly consider and perform a pilot in that area.
And the reason I bring this up through the chair is simply because that seems to be a problematic area. That seems to be something that we need to fix. We don't know if the reason you have a pilot to see if it could apply throughout Richmond, other construction zones or something. So I'm going to support option 4 that Councillor Wolf has proposed, and with some type of caveat for information only that we consider Spires Road area as the pilot project area.
So I have a question. If we approve option 4, will staff be deciding which areas are going to be, this will be implemented in, or is it something that would come to council for each and every situation?
Madam Chair, I think we'd have to figure that out as we go along here. And what I would suggest is that we would bring forward an area where we would we'd ask council if the area would be something that they would like to do, and we'd probably look for council's direction on the specific area.
Okay, so it seems like we have the option 4 on the table, and so far we have a number of people that were willing to support it. Is there anyone who wants to make any amendments to option 4? Okay, then, all those in favor of option 4? Those against? Okay, that passes with Councillor Liu opposed. All right, moving on to item number 2. That's the 2023 Liquid Waste Management Plan Biennial Report. Staff's recommendation is that the report be presented as attached and be submitted to Metro Vancouver. So, is there any additions or deletions or comments you would like to make about this report?
Madam Chair, no additions and available to answer questions.
All right, that sounds great. Are there any questions? There we go. Councillor Wolf, there we go.
Thank you, through the chair to staff. I think of four topic questions that are all quite brief. First overview, though, question is there's a table, municipal progress summary table, page 5051, and I'm just trying to, I've been struggling as I've been reading the report of, or not the report part, but the attachment to the report, whatever it's called, the submission checklist and the biennial report. The numbers in the table don't seem to match up. Should I be seeing that the summary table matches everything before it? Or are those numbers and bullets not as necessarily associated?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, those numbers are the changes since the last submission, so the last report would have been 2 years ago.
Okay. So the numbers don't necessarily coincide with what was before it. Okay, my first one then is related to is related to pesticides. This is on page PWT 29. It's the section on stormwater runoff and some of the things we do in the city to prevent pesticides from running off. I assume most of this is related to cosmetic pesticides where we have the city's pesticide use control bylaw. My question is, does this also capture agricultural pesticide use? I think not. And does it also have any work with the rodenticide use? And I bring that up as Mitchell Island was just flooded recently, and last time I was there, almost all the businesses I went close to had rodenticide, what I thought were rodenticide boxes outside there in the parking lot area. So those would have been submerged underwater and floating down the river in the ocean at this point. But could you speak to those two parts of this?
Absolutely. Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the notes in the report do refer to the cosmetic use of pesticides. So it would be grade 1 pesticides that would be available at department stores. We don't currently have a system in place whereby we test waters for rodenticide at this time. And certainly could look at that in future program. And also we don't have a program right now where we're actively monitoring for pesticide use in the agricultural community.
Great, thank you. A follow-up on that. Is it not a requirement like I don't see it as a checklist, like encourage your municipality to have a goal to reduce in these areas? We're not really encouraged to make those changes from this? Is that
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there are requirements through the Metro Vancouver program. There's also requirements through farming agricultures, for example, to meet certain standards for pesticide use as well, but that is outside of the city's purview.
Okay, thank you. My next question relates to, on the next page 30, which is under, I guess it starts on the page before it, the Green Cart Program and odor control is kind of described there on page 30. So my question there is, could you just outline, I believe all of our green cart waste that gets collected in the city leaves the city to do all of its composting outside the city since Harvest Power moved out. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we have our colleagues from Public Works that can help.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that is correct. We do send all of our green cart material to a facility in Delta.
Okay, then just in connection to this, as I mentioned at planning yesterday, that Public Works staff are aware of the proposal that Burnaby is making to have an organic waste facility directly north of Richmond, and you're aware of it, and perhaps how that might infringe on odor control in our shared region. Okay, thanks. My next question to staff is on from page 37, which is about the pump out facilities. So I see there's some kind of actions here related to getting marinas that are existing now and any future, any marina that exists now and is going to do some project or upgrade, and then any new marina that comes to the city, that they have pump outs. Could, at this point, could you just, or if you're able to, could you just outline how many of our marinas have pump outs? And has it changed since 2001?
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, I don't have that details with me at the moment, but we could provide that update to you if required.
Do we know if there's been any added?
I'm not clear on any additions.
Then the last question area is related to greenhouse gas emissions. And so I'm looking on page 42, that table in the middle that shows 2021 and 2022. And the sentence above it says, an estimated total emissions due to electricity use at sanitary pump stations and sanitary fleet fuel use for operations. Which of those columns corresponds with which? Is the bio CO2 the sanitary pump stations? And is the CO2e sanitary fleet fuel? That's my first question.
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, perhaps one of our colleagues from sustainability could help with that one.
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, I'd have to look at this in more detail. I'm not able to answer specifically, but we can follow up with more information as needed.
Okay, so thanks. As I see it, if I look at 2021 and I can add the numbers together, and then I look at 2022 and add those numbers together, it looks like the total amount of tons is going up. And then if I look at the summary table on page 51, it's on page 51, part 6, greenhouse gas emissions. It mentions that it doesn't mention there the totals or changes. It's all not applicable. But I'm not sure, is it not applicable, or is it we don't have the data, or is it that we're actually going in the wrong direction and we're increasing greenhouse gas emissions from these two categories?
Through the chair to Councilor, we'd look at this further again as well. I think the city is a growing city, so I think some growth would be associated with these numbers as well.
Okay, so just a final follow-up then. What do you know why that's not applicable? Is it something that still needs to be met or researched, or does it not apply to us as a city?
Through the chair, I'm not sure I quite understand the reference point for the question. Could you reiterate
Well,
the reference?
yeah, sure. Just like if I look the page before, under section 2 is page 50, it says combined sewer system inventory. Those are all non-applicable. I think that's because we don't have combined sewers.
To the chair, to Councilor Wolf, that's correct. We do not have combined
Okay,
sewers.
but we do have CO2 emissions from sewer systems. So I think the non-applicable is for a different reason. That's all I was trying to.
This might be something better to email directly to staff on and get clarification, because.
Okay. With that then, yeah, everything else in the report kind of makes sense as I went through it. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other questions regarding this report? I had a couple. I'm really interested in this report because these numbers are going to go to Metro Vancouver and be submitted from the City of Richmond. But I was just curious about a few small things. Like on page 39, we talk about the sewer heat recovery, which is amazing. But we've never talked about eco-waste, and they have large pipes coming out of the ground where gas is just burning. Is that something we can look at in the future?
Through the chair, that's something that we could work with them on that. We are aware also other entities like Metro Vancouver does flare off some gas, and they actually use that within their facility.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, we did connect with Eco Waste, and they are flaring their methane from the landfill, so they are capturing approximately 50 to 55% of what they're capturing and flaring. And because methane is a GHG gas, it's more harmful than CO2, so by flaring it, they are reducing it, making the impact of it less harmful. However, they are working to on a deal that they expect to be arrived at in a matter of months, where they will work to capture, clean, and then put that methane back as a gas into the system. So they're working on that, hoping to be close to a deal and then have that in place within 2 years is what they've advised.
Wow, that'd be an exciting change, yeah. Then we really have something to report to Metro. The other question I had was on PWT 17, and it talks about a full-time grease officer. Because as we know, a lot of our restaurants have an enormous amount of grease, and it has to be dealt with. We don't want it down the drains. Well, my question was, I've heard really good things about biodiesel being made from this grease that's used from restaurants. Is there any recovery program to make sure that that's an option for the people who collect the grease?
To Madam Chair, I'm not aware of any program that we have at the city.
Okay, so we'll have to look into that. And then where's it here? Stormwater, it's exciting that stormwater can be harvested. Talk a little bit about what we do with stormwater. I think it's on page, where are we, 16, I think? Storm.
Sorry, Madam Chair, can you repeat the
Like
page?
for farming and that sort of thing.
Madam Chair, yes, we do intake stormwater through some of our pump stations, so backwards from the river, that can be used for irrigation and agricultural properties.
That's always a good use of water, better than using drinking water. So, and the last one was where are we here? Sorry. Nope, that's it from that one. Thank you very much. So we're being asked to receive this for information. Do we have a motion? Seconded? All those in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so that takes us to number 3, which is the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Adaptation Grant Application. So another grant we're going for. Does he have anything to add to your report?
Madam Chair, nothing to add, available for questions.
All right, do we have any questions on the grant? Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. First, thanks for creating, or working on 3 proposed projects that meet the grant maximum, and we can achieve the greatest bang for the buck there. My 2 questions, short ones are, when it mentions we have existing sensors in river, box culverts and canals, could you ballpark like how many sensors do we have in total, or is there one of these 3 categories that we have a lot of and not so much in the others?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we have more in our box culverts and our drainage system, so probably dozens in the city.
Okay, thanks. And then the second question I had through the chair to staff is on the operating budget impact. Only the flood protection monitoring stations would have an impact. This is in the table on page 62, about 17,000. So would that have to create a new staff position, or would that fold into existing work?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that would be through existing staff. Again, we already have existing monitors, and just this adds to that workload.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, all those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And my apologies to committee, I did neglect to amend the agenda, so I'd like to add 3A, which is Councillor Heed wants an update on the Cambie and number 5 road intersection. 3B would be updating on the Steveston multi-purpose bike lanes. And 3C is questions of staff on Rice Mill Road to Steveston Highway. So can we make that a friendly amendment, or do we need to vote on it? No. Anybody, any currents? Okay, I do apologize. I should have done that at the beginning. So 3A, Councillor Heed, you had some questions about Cambie and number 5. Oh. Are you there? There we go.
Yeah, I think it's self-explanatory if we can get an update. My understanding is from a community organization with respect to capital funding that was put aside, I imagine some time ago, and they haven't noticed any upgrades to that intersection. That is in my opinion, a dangerous intersection. I know we've got the cameras there, the red light camera and all that. Just the other day, 2 young girls were hit near that particular area. So I just wanted an upgrade to see if, in fact, we are moving forward on that.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, absolutely, council did approve upgrade project in 2020. It's currently in the design process, I imagine. It is certain, I can't remember where it ranks exactly in the top 20 worst collision-prone intersections in the city, but I believe it was in the top 10.
So, timeframe, like, so I can get back to them with respect to that, like, the money's there, it's gonna happen. Are we looking at, in 2023, 2024, any ballpark, timeframe?
I have to, through the chair to Councillor Heed, I have to refer to my colleagues in engineering to let you know when they can deliver that project.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, so we are in design at this point. We still have a number of issues to resolve. Some of those could be, again, looking at the land take and what all the other things required to complete the design.
All I'm looking for is a ballpark figure.
To the chair to Councillor Heed.
2020, and we're now in 2023, and we still don't even have the design done.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, we can look at that and provide an update through committee.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Let's get a memo on that so we can all be aware. Thank you. Was there any other questions on that issue? Okay. 3B is update on the Steveston Highway multi-use bike lane, multi-purpose bike lane. It goes, I think it's number 1 to almost Railway. Would staff like to update on that? We've had a lot of emails. Everyone in council here is getting emailed by people in the community, particularly the West Wind community, who would like to know what's happening with that, with the grants and with the design and the public engagement.
Madam Chair, absolutely. We are actually bringing forward a report to GP on the Monday the 6th. So in very short order, I don't know if you want me to try and rehash that here, if we can wait till Monday.
What's the feeling of, you're okay to wait for the report? Okay, let's get the report. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, we're reacting to the public who are asking us, so I'm glad that the report's coming on March 6th. 3C was the Rice Mill Road to Steveston Highway. Again, with everything that's going on with the Massey Tunnel project, I did want an update from staff. Are there any options to making that a reality? Sorry, Mr. B, I make you go back and forth here. You're getting your exercise today.
No problem, Madam Chair. Happy to answer your questions. Really, I think we've laid out the options fairly well. Like the province does not have any inclination to make that connection. So if the city would like to pursue that, we'll need direction from council to pursue that project. We've shown that it's actually, it's not an inexpensive project at all. And that's the challenge. From staff's perspective, we don't believe that the utility matches the price point for it. We think that money could be used much better in other areas across the city. However, at council's direction, we can certainly pursue that and move forward with it.
And can you clarify, is there a city-owned roadway that goes from Steveston Highway to Rice Mill Road?
A city-owned roadway, on which side? You mean on the, probably on the east side of the highway? No, there isn't one that goes to Rice Mill Road. It kind of dead ends over there, right? We do own like I think I mentioned this before previously, that we do own the number 6 road dedication out there. It's currently blocked off and under contract with the port. Yeah. So, if we really wanted to, we could reopen that and talk to them about that. But we don't own any of the property between, is it Kenfisco? I think the fish processing plant over there, all the way over to number 6 road. We don't own anything there at this point in time.
So if we don't own it, how is it leased to the port?
We own number 6 road, which is north-south,
Yeah.
not the east-west portion. We don't have the connectivity between number 6 road and the dead ending of Rice Mill Road.
So to be clear, you've got from Steveston Highway to the river, but there's no connection to Rice Mill Road.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's a partial. Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. Let's deal with that again down the road. Okay, so we have manager's report.
Madam Chair, I have 2 items to bring forward for committee. The first is regarding outreach events this weekend, and the second is on the proposed Burnaby Organics facility that Councillor Wolf alluded to. So firstly, this weekend we held 2 events. The first was a textile repair fair. It was the first one of 2023. It was a success. We held it at Canby Community Centre. There were 40 items that were repaired through the duration of the event. And that included items like pants, shirts. There was actually even a teddy bear that was fixed. And the response overall was extremely positive. And we will be holding our second repair fair in March.
Was there any education component to this whereby people were encouraged not to throw clothes in the garbage, but in fact to donate it to a charitable organization?
Yes, so we did have staff on site that were communicating with residents as they are awaiting their turn in regards to Metro Vancouver's Think Thrice campaign and also the work we're doing around reuse and repurposing items. Yes.
Sorry, yeah, excellent. And the second?
Yes, and the second was at the Children's Arts Festival. We held a creativity class. This was also in regards to textiles. So there was 20 students that were a part of this class, plus 12 adults that accompanied them. They were asked to bring a t-shirt, and they were taught how to turn that t-shirt into a bag. And then the offcuts from that were used to make headbands and scrunchies as well. And that was extremely positive. And at that event, we did share messaging around reuse and Think Thrice as well.
Well done. Thank you.
And the second note to share with committee is in regards to the proposed Burnaby Organics facility. So on February 6, 2023, Burnaby Council did authorize staff to proceed with next steps to construct a city-owned green waste facility at 4800 Riverbend Drive. Staff did learn about this project through general news, and we were not consulted. The facility is intended to process up to 150,000 tons of organic material through anaerobic digestion with the potential for biogas recovery. So staff will be looking into this further with both Metro Vancouver and Burnaby.
I think Councillor Liu has a question for you.
Thank you very much for your information. In regards to textiles and recycling, I saw today at one of those return it depots that they have a box for putting in textiles again. So do we know that that's available throughout the city? And because I think Councillor Au had put forward a referral for us to look into it as a city, but if it's already being dealt with elsewhere, are you aware of it?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I was not aware that Return It had restarted that project, so that's definitely something I can look into and report back on. We are still actively working on the referral from Councillor Councillor Au. Apologies.
And I also have a question regarding the Burnaby 150-ton-a-year organic facility. You know, we went through Harvest Power, which was an absolute nightmare here in Richmond. Are there any guarantees that we're not going to deal with exactly the same situation, or is it too early in the stage?
My understanding, through the chair, Madam Chair, my understanding is they have been authorized to proceed with next steps, which would include getting permitting and further allowances from the province and other jurisdiction to proceed further. So early, but they have received approval to move forward.
And so the City of Richmond will have an opportunity to comment, I would think.
Madam Chair, I believe so.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Councillor McNulty, did you want to add something?
No, I just said we'll find out tomorrow when it's on the agenda at Metro Vancouver. I don't think she can answer for
Okay, well,
what the Mayor of Burnaby's thinking at the moment.
Yeah.
Just being fair to her.
All right, well, we'll find out from Councillor McNulty after the meeting at Metro tomorrow then. Thank you. For any other updates?
No.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other managers' updates? Councillor Wolf has a question of staff.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair. First question, I thought Councillor Glanders was going to be here to ask it. It was about our work to remove Scotch broom and Himalayan blackberry, and if that's getting any priority this year. There's areas where it needs to be removed before it goes to seed. There's been a lot of farmland identified along Westminster Highway. There's also the multi-use pathway gets covered with blackberry every year, and if we're just trimming it off at the fence edge, it's going to come back, and we need to work to get it removed at the roots. So are we prioritizing any of that this year?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I think the areas you're referring to would be better suited for questions to parks, as long as trails are answered. I'm not aware of any programs for those right now, but I'm sure parks would be able to answer that for you.
Great, thanks. My next question was, I'm going to be talking more with Mr. B around traffic calming project work in Hamilton, so I don't need to address that right now, but it's been all over the social media, lots of concerns there. And then the last one I thought I'd just bring up, because today on my way in, I went about 14 kilometers along ditches, mainly River Road, 6 Road, Blundell, and I couldn't believe how much debris, garbage, construction is in our ditches. And I know it's hard for you to reach because the tongs, garbage pickup tongs, don't go long enough. But how are we addressing some of the garbage, like the individual pieces that are along some of these thoroughfares where trucks are going to eco-waste to drop them off, and if they're not covered on the top? And then another thing, it looks like people just stop in the middle of the night on the sides of some of these roads and chuck bags of garbage out, like I just threw that pen, and then the rodents or whatever rip the bags open, and it's just forever seems to be compounding. And again, people seem to go every night, and our crews will remove from farmland or dikes, and then the next day a new fresh pile is dumped again. How are we doing on this?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we are aware of these issues along the predominantly River Road between 6 Road and 7 Road. Unfortunately, these areas are along private property, so they're not part of our regular litter picking routes. However, as you identified, we do send litter crews to respond to collect litter and illegally dumped items that are reported to the city. Specifically in regards to River Road between 6 Road and 7 Road, we have conducted a substantial cleanup there, and that was actually done January 30th to February 7th. It has been identified that this area is, as you mentioned, a road that is traveled significantly by recycling trucks on their way to GFL Environmental Inc., which is contracted by Recycle BC. So we are working with both GFL and Recycle BC to better address this issue at the source, to encourage them to get the message out to their haulers to ensure that loads are secured as they're traveling our roadways. And this specific area has been identified and is included in our scheduled servicing to monitor this more closely as we work to address this issue more closely with GFL and Recycle BC.
That's great information.
Final comment. We have the snow coming, and there's going to be plows that push all the snow and the debris that's in that parking lot or whatever right up to the edge of the dike, and then you'll see once it all melts away, all this garbage and stuff is slowly going to go in. And I think it's a clear indication where it's coming from, and we can kind of link it to the snow melt. Whereas if it's not using snow melt, it's hard to claim that that piece in there came from the closest building. I get that challenge, but I think there is some obvious links that we can call out some of the property owners to take responsibility for this forever flow of waste off of some of these sites. So,
All right,
yeah,
thank you
thanks.
very much. With all that, if everyone has no more questions, move to adjourn. All those in favor? Great, thank you very much.